"Sir, this check is unusual. The routing numbers don't look standard, and frankly, the paper feels off." "I'm afraid I can't accept this," the bank teller said, her voice a blend of feigned politeness and thinly veiled suspicion. Sergeant Major Kimberly Garner, 82, a man whose life had been defined by precision and honor, felt a familiar weariness. "That check is a direct Treasury disbursement, young lady. For retroactive disability compensation I've waited years for. It's perfectly valid." The teller, unconvinced, fed the check into the shredder beside her terminal. Bank policy for suspicious instruments. 5 minutes later, as Kimberly stood stunned and speechless, the bank's quiet atmosphere was shattered by the unannounced arrival of a stern-faced woman flanked by Secret Service agents. Her name was on the check the teller had just destroyed. "If you believe service and sacrifice deserve unquestioning respect, type honor below." Sergeant Major Kimberly Garner was a man of meticulous habits and quiet fortitude. His small, neat apartment was a testament to a life lived with order and discipline, a stark contrast to the chaotic theaters of war where he'd served for over 30 years. From the rice paddies of Vietnam to the deserts of Iraq, he'd been an army logistician, a master of ensuring critical supplies reached the front lines, often under duress. He knew the importance of verified documents, secure channels, and unwavering accuracy. Today, he held a document of profound personal importance, a U.S. Treasury check. It wasn't just any check. It represented years of back and forth with the Department of Veterans Affairs, a final, hard-won approval for retroactive disability compensation related to injuries sustained during a classified operation decades ago. The amount was substantial enough to finally repair his leaking roof and perhaps even visit his grandchildren on the West Coast, a trip his modest pension had always kept just out of reach. He'd chosen to deposit it in person at the downtown branch of Consolidated Trust Bank, his bank for nearly half a century. He anticipated a straightforward transaction, a quiet resolution to a long, frustrating bureaucratic battle. He wore his usual neat but unassuming attire, pressed khaki trousers, a clean-collared shirt, and a lightweight windbreaker. He carried the check carefully in an inside pocket along with his VA identification and driver's license. The bank lobby was busy, the lunchtime rush in full swing. Kimberly waited patiently in line, observing the tellers with a practiced eye. He was directed to a young teller named Jennifer Mason, whose name tag proclaimed her a customer service specialist. Jennifer had a bright, slightly artificial smile, and an air of someone who believed wholeheartedly in the infallibility of the system and the importance of following procedure. Kimberly approached her window, greeted her politely, and presented the Treasury check along with his deposit slip and VA ID. "Good afternoon," he said. "I'd like to deposit this, please." Jennifer took the check, her smile fixed. She glanced at it, then her eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. She ran it under a UV light, held it up to scrutinize the watermark, then typed its details into her computer. Her frown deepened. "Sir," she began, her voice taking on a cautious, slightly accusatory tone, "this check, it's a very large amount, and the paper stock feels a bit unusual. Are you certain its authenticity?" Kimberly felt a prickle of annoyance, quickly suppressed. "Young lady, that is a United States Treasury check issued by the Department of Veterans Affairs. It is as authentic as the dollars in your till. The paper stock is standard government issue." Jennifer continued to eye the check with suspicion. "The routing number format also seems atypical for our usual government deposits. And the signature line." She trailed off, then shook her head. "I'm sorry, sir, but there are several red flags here. It doesn't meet our standard verification protocols for a check of this magnitude from an unfamiliar source." "Unfamiliar source?" Kimberly echoed, his patience thinning. "It's the U.S. Treasury. It clearly states Department of Veterans Affairs and Disability Compensation. My name is on it, and this is my VA identification matching the payee." He pushed his ID closer. Jennifer barely glanced at it. "Sir, we see many kinds of checks. Scammers are very sophisticated these days. Bank policy is very clear. If a teller has any suspicion about the validity of an instrument, especially a large one, we are instructed not to process it and to take preventative measures." Before Kimberly could protest further, before he could demand to see a manager or ask her to call the Treasury's verification line, a number he knew by heart, Jennifer did something that left him utterly speechless. With a decisive movement, she turned to the industrial-grade paper shredder built into the counter beside her terminal, a machine clearly intended for sensitive internal documents, and fed his Treasury check into the slot. The machine whirred aggressively for a few seconds, then fell silent. His check, his hard-won compensation, his hope for a repaired roof and a family visit, was confetti. Kimberly stared at the shredder, then at Jennifer, his face a mask of stunned disbelief. "You just shredded a United States Treasury check," he finally managed, his voice a choked whisper. Jennifer looked back, unfazed, a hint of self-satisfaction in her expression. "Bank policy, sir. For instruments deemed potentially fraudulent or unprocessable due to irregularities, it prevents them from being represented elsewhere. You'll need to contact the issuer to have a new check sent, assuming it was legitimate in the first place." She then added with a dismissive shrug, "If you have an issue with that, you can speak to our branch manager, but he'll tell you the same thing. I was following protocol." The sheer audacity, the casual destruction of a significant, valid government payment based on her uninformed suspicion and rigid adherence to a misapplied policy, left Kimberly momentarily paralyzed. Other customers in line were now openly staring, sensing the drama. The branch manager, Fernando Johnson, attracted by the sudden silence, then the low murmur, began to amble over from his office. Kimberly felt a cold fury rise within him, a fury he hadn't experienced since his active duty days. This wasn't just incompetence. It was an insult of the highest order, a flagrant disregard for his integrity and the legitimacy of the government itself. He took a slow, deliberate breath, his mind racing. Arguing with this teller or her equally clueless manager would be a monumental waste of time. He needed to go higher, much higher. "I see," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Thank you for so clearly demonstrating Consolidated Trust Bank's protocol." He turned, not towards the manager's office, but towards the bank's main entrance. He walked out into the bright afternoon sunlight, his heart pounding, not with fear, but with righteous anger. He sat on a nearby public bench, pulled out his old, scuffed cell phone, and scrolled to a number he kept for dire emergencies. A direct line that bypassed layers of bureaucracy. It was a contact he'd been given by a 3-star general he'd once served as senior enlisted advisor to, a man who now held a very senior civilian oversight role within the Treasury Department itself. "Use this if the system truly fails you, Sergeant Major," the general had said. "Some knots can only be untied from the very top." Kimberly pressed dial. The call was answered on the first ring by a calm, professional aide. "Office of the Under-Secretary for Domestic Finance. How may I help you?" "This is Sergeant Major Kimberly Garner, retired," Kimberly stated clearly. "I need to speak with Under-Secretary Madison Chung directly. It is a matter of urgent financial malfeasance involving the destruction of a U.S. Treasury instrument by a commercial banking institution. My authorization code is Sierra Tango Alpha 779er. There was a brief pause. Then the aide's voice, noticeably more alert. "One moment, Sergeant Major Garner." "Connecting you now." Seconds later, a familiar authoritative voice came on the line. "Kimberly, is that you? What in blazes is going on?" It was Madison Chung, now indeed the Undersecretary of the Treasury, a man who had once been a young captain relying on Sergeant Major Garner's wisdom. Kimberly quickly and concisely explained what had just transpired at the Consolidated Trust Bank branch, the legitimate VA disability check, the teller's unfounded suspicions, and the shocking act of shredding it. He gave the bank name, branch address, and the teller's name. Undersecretary Chung listened in stunned silence, punctuated only by increasingly sharp intakes of breath. When Kimberly finished, there was a moment of dead silence on the line. Then Chung exploded, not at Kimberly but with a cold, controlled fury. She shredded it. A Treasury check, based on her suspicions. Unbelievable. "Kimberly, are you still near the bank?" "Yes, sir." "On a bench right outside." "Don't move," Chung commanded. "I'm in D.C., but I know exactly who to call. The regional director of the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency for that district owes me a rather large favor, as does the head of the Treasury's own. Internal security. This isn't just incompetence, Kimberly. This is a potential federal offense. Stay put. You'll see some action within minutes. And Kimberly, I'm profoundly sorry this happened to you." "Wait a second. Tell us where you were watching from in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this." The line went dead. Kimberly leaned back on the bench, the adrenaline slowly ebbing, replaced by a grim anticipation. He looked at his watch. He hadn't even been out of the bank for 5 minutes. The quiet confidence in Madison Chung's voice suggested that action would be swift and decisive. Less than 5 minutes later, a time frame that spoke volumes about the urgency with which Undersecretary Chung's calls had been received. 2 dark sedans with unobtrusive government plates pulled up sharply in front of the Consolidated Trust Bank. They hadn't used sirens, but their arrival had an air of undeniable serious purpose. 4 individuals in dark conservative suits emerged. 2 of them, a man and a woman, immediately entered the bank, displaying gold badges that made the uniformed bank security guard visibly pale and step aside hastily. The other two took up discreet but observant positions near the entrance. Inside the bank, teller Jennifer Mason was just starting to explain to Fernando Johnson, the branch manager, why she'd shredded the suspicious check from the old guy. Fernando was nodding along, already preparing his "we follow" policy to protect our customers' speech. Their conversation was cut short as the two federal agents approached them, their expressions grim. Mr. Johnson, Ms. Holly Juarez, the lead agent, a tall woman with sharp, intelligent eyes, stated, "I am Special Agent Jared Adams, Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, Federal Audit Division. This is Special Agent John Skinner, U.S. Treasury Office of Inspector General." She presented her credentials, as did Agent Skinner. "We are here to conduct an immediate, unannounced emergency audit of this branch's check handling procedures, cash control measures, and compliance with federal regulations regarding us, Treasury instruments. We have also been made aware," her eyes fixed on Jennifer, "of the recent and highly irregular destruction of a valid U.S. Treasury check issued to Sergeant Major Kimberly Garner. Miss Juarez, you will accompany Agent Skinner to a private office. You are not under arrest, but this is a formal federal inquiry. Mr. Johnson, you will provide us with immediate access to all relevant transaction logs, security footage from this teller station for the last hour, and your branch's written policy on handling suspicious checks." Jennifer looked as if she might faint. Fernando's face had gone a sickly gray. Federal audit, Treasury, OIG. But why? "Because," Agent Adams said, her voice like ice, "when a bank teller takes it upon herself to unilaterally destroy a payment issued by the United States Treasury to a decorated veteran, it ceases to be a simple customer service issue and becomes a matter of significant federal concern. The Secretary of the Treasury himself," she added, letting the name drop with deliberate weight, "has been apprised of this situation and is awaiting our preliminary report with extreme interest." The audit was swift and brutal. Jennifer, under questioning from Agent Skinner, quickly crumbled, admitting she hadn't actually followed the bank's full protocol for suspicious checks, which involved escalating to a manager and attempting verification, not immediate destruction. She confessed she'd found the old man a bit odd, and the check just didn't feel right, relying on her gut rather than procedure or common sense. Fernando Johnson, faced with pointed questions from Agent Adams about his staff's training and his own oversight, could only offer stammering apologies and promises of immediate retraining. While the agents worked inside, a very flustered and important-looking regional executive from Consolidated Trust Bank's corporate headquarters arrived. Having clearly received a frantic, high-level call, he rushed into the bank, bypassing Kimberly on the bench without a glance, his face a mask of panic. A few minutes later, Undersecretary Chung called Kimberly back. "Kimberly," he said, his voice calmer now but still firm, "my apologies again. Here's what's happening. The OCC and Treasury OIG are all over that branch. Your replacement check for the full amount is being electronically transferred to your account as we speak. It should clear by end of day. All associated bank fees, if any, were to arise, are being waived. Consolidated Trust's regional executive is on site and is being strongly advised on appropriate customer service, especially for veterans. The teller in question is being immediately suspended, likely terminated, pending the full investigation. The branch manager is also under severe review." "Madison," Kimberly said, genuinely moved. "That's more than I ever expected." "Thank you." "Nonsense, Kimberly," Chung replied. "You served this country with honor for 30 years. The least your country can do is ensure its own damn bank tellers don't shred your pension. You take care of yourself and let me know if there are any further issues." Kimberly sat on the bench for a while longer, watching the comings and goings at the bank. He saw Jennifer being escorted out by Agent Skinner, looking utterly defeated. He saw Fernando Johnson and the regional executive in intense, hushed conversation with Agent Adams. The power dynamic had shifted entirely. The bank that had dismissed him so casually was now itself under the microscope, its procedures and personnel subject to the full scrutiny of federal power. All because one teller had made a profoundly bad judgment call about a quiet old soldier and a check she didn't understand. It was a stark reminder that true authority wasn't always loud or obvious, and that sometimes the oldest, most unassuming channels held the most direct lines to swift, decisive justice. Because when you shred a veteran's lifeline, you might just find you've shredded your own credibility with people who take such matters very, very seriously. And just like that, a simple trip to the bank became a lesson in dignity, respect, and the quiet strength of those who've served. Sergeant Major Garner didn't raise his voice. He didn't demand attention. But when integrity is matched with perseverance and backed by the right allies, justice answers swiftly. In a world quick to judge by appearance, one teller's careless decision reminded everyone watching that titles may fade, but honor does not. Let this be a reminder, Never underestimate the silent strength of a veteran, or the weight of a check signed by sacrifice. If you believe our heroes deserve better, if you believe in accountability, dignity, and justice, then don't just watch. Stand up, speak out, subscribe, share, and remember, respect is not optional. It's earned, and it must be honored.